Dear Global Leaders Innovation Summit and London Tech Week participants, I'm Dr. Gruber, Research Fellow at King's Business School here in London and co-lead of the London and the South Regional Productivity Forum. Our forum is a consortium of leading industry experts and policymakers and is part of the UK Productivity Institute. Now, the Productivity Institute is a 5-year, £32 million project funded by the Economic and Social Research Council. Now, you may wonder, why is productivity so important? Well, the more productive we are, the less time it takes to produce any given product or service. The more productive you are, the more profitable your business will be. And productivity also drives well-being in your teams and society as a whole. My King's Business School colleagues, Professor Marcella Miozzo and Professor Damien Grimshaw and I have written a background paper to explore how we can grow productivity in London, the Southwest and the Southeast. Now, productivity can grow economic growth, but we also want to understand how productivity can grow well-being, diversity and inclusion, and how it can make our economy more sustainable. Over time, and this is very interesting, technical change is the central driving force behind productivity growth. So you as leaders in technology have one of the most vital roles to play in growing productivity, well-being, sustainability, and all-around progress. But we also understand that you face your very own challenges in scaling up your technologies. So before we talk about tech in particular, let's zoom out a bit and look at the broader national and international context of London and the South and the businesses here in this area. Now, this figure here from our background paper shows that on the horizontal axis, you can see that London has extremely high levels of productivity. But on the y-axis, you can see that over the last decade, London has experienced almost no productivity growth at all. At the same time, at the top right, you can see Paris has high productivity and still grows at a rapid pace. So we know in theory that London can still make a productivity comeback. Just catching up with our previous productivity growth from 1998 to 2007 would in itself already harbour a productivity boost of 24%, according to the Greater London Authority. Now, how do we deliver on such a huge boost to the economy? Well, that's an excellent question. The first step to getting to a potential answer is to understand the global and wider influences on London and the South. The financial crisis has had a significant impact on London's finance sector, which is extremely strong still. And Brexit, we can also see from studies, has had a quite strong negative impact on foreign direct investment and R&D in London and the South. And this has since been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. We also need to understand the very local circumstances. No matter how innovative a technology is in itself, its effectiveness in raising productivity and well-being always depends on things like the local infrastructure in that given area, or the supply chains around it, or the general business base, the skills and things like that. So we work with local policymakers as well as local businesses to pick out what these specific issues are in each region that we are looking at. What really stands out in London is how divergent the productivity performance is. You have the top 10% of businesses that are 3 times more productive than the bottom 10% of businesses. You have some of the most productive, most high-tech businesses in all of Europe and the whole world. Businesses with the most high-skilled labor and managerial skills that know how to implement technologies. And you also have businesses relatively nearby, geographically speaking, that have a relative overuse of low-wage labor and a low capital investment, such as in efficiency-increasing technologies. So they are not using high-skilled labor and high-skilled technology, and we are asking why that is. How can we encourage these businesses to invest more when they probably feel on a different planet compared to these superstar firms that are relatively nearby that attract all the finance and the best managers in the world? In rural areas, on the other hand, such as in the Southwest or also in the Southeast, we face completely different problems and completely different conditions. Here we must first ask how to lay the groundwork so that local businesses and other stakeholders, local policymakers, can really unleash their potential with their own innovative activities. And this of course includes infrastructure such as broadband, so that every business in every single sector can do things more efficiently. Now, when we look at the Southwest, it has some very unique strengths in high-value manufacturing, especially in aerospace, electronics. It also has some very strong and quickly upcoming digital hubs and creative hubs, such as in Bristol and in Bath. But the Southwest also has very unique strengths in tourism and in hospitality that we can build on. So the question is, how can the rest of the Southwest benefit from its proximity to London and its own innovative hubs? How can we enhance stakeholder networks, and how can we ensure knowledge and expertise flow from, let's say, London and the own hubs that Southwest has to the many smaller and rural businesses, and basically improve their productivity? And as always, things are not quite that easy. Farmers and restaurants and any other kind of business may very well benefit from the latest innovations in fintech or in, let's say, enterprise resource planning and smartphone apps to manage daily tasks. But technology can only be as useful as the people's ability that use it. So we really focus on two major themes. The first is organizational capital, and the second one is human capital. Organizational capital refers to the efficiency with which businesses create their products and services and therefore contribute to productivity and well-being. One study suggests that up to 55% of the productivity gap between the US and the UK is down to one single variable: managerial skills. UK businesses are simply not managed as effectively as businesses elsewhere in the world, in comparative countries. Now, managerial skills might apply to managers training their employees, the adoption of innovations, and many other general best practices as managers and leaders. Now, we don't know for sure to what degree managerial skills are responsible for any productivity gaps here in London and the South, but we do know from research and from our forum members that especially small and medium enterprises here in London and the South are considerably less productive than their SME counterparts in, for instance, Germany. For many small businesses and startups, it is simply too hard to scale up, too hard to grow, even though they have potential. The technology firms in our forum reiterate this again and again. They lack access to finance and they lack access to skilled labor. Now, maybe you can help us understand as to why exactly that is. Now, the second theme that is really important here is that of human capital. Human capital can be about a person's education, about their skills, even about their health and their personalities. It's about the alignment of their abilities with the skills gaps in the economy or the future needs in the economy. An analysis by the Department of Business, Innovation and Skills has shown that human capital alone is responsible for around 1/5 of UK's labour productivity growth. Now, we have to recognize that human capital is not only born out of primary schools and universities, but it's also about lifelong learning, and it's also about the education and the training that businesses provide their employees. But starting with primary and secondary education, we can see that the total spending per pupil between 2009 and 2019 has decreased from a bit over £6,500 to just below £6,000. So that's a reduction of almost 10% in just 10 years. Here, our background paper reveals some stark regional differences within the UK. In fact, the Southeast and the Southwest are, relatively speaking, the lowest areas in terms of public spending on education. And the 5 areas with the highest public spending on education are all in London. In Islington, for example, public spending per pupil is around £8,100. And also in London, in Bromley, it's only £1,600. Another intriguing thing about London and the South is that these 3 regions are almost unique internationally speaking as to how much support universities receive, particularly in certain areas in London, compared to how much support primary or secondary schools receive. One issue our forum members highlight as to holding them back from growing, from scaling up, is that they cannot retain or attract many of these university graduates. So one of the key questions we would love you being involved with is helping us to find out how we can improve the attractiveness and the mobility of these graduates of some of the world's best universities. And our paper shows yet another interesting thing. Advanced skills, something that graduates attain in higher education and university, are not really fully utilized by firms in the region. There is actually a gap of intermediate skills, of industry-specific and technical skills. So what we need, and the most pressing question we have here, is how can we broaden skills so that we have, on the one hand, new recruits in agriculture who know how to harvest crops, or in digital industries, as well as in manufacturing or in electronics companies, who know precisely what they need to do. So we could be looking at more apprenticeships, for example. And at the same time, how these sometimes less knowledge-intensive jobs can be upgraded so that these new recruits can deal with more complexity, that they can work in teams, and that they can use digital devices. Unfortunately, studies also show that the businesses here in our region, especially SMEs, are not able to resolve these problems completely on their own without the help of government. An OECD study shows that out of 22 evaluated countries, the UK has the worst alignment between the skills that are conveyed in training by firms and the skills that are considered important for performance by the same companies. So next to tech and talking about businesses and skills, local government is actually critical in all of this. Policymakers who are part of our forum tell us they would need far more resources, autonomy and capacity from central government to be able to implement the necessary actions. So local government can be a real bottleneck to scaling up and growing. Now all of this comes down to 2 critical things that we would like you to help us with. First, how can we make technological innovation easier to understand and to adopt, particularly for the SMEs and local government? And secondly, what do tech startups and businesses need in order to scale up, to invest more and hire the right people? Now we would be delighted to answer these questions with you and together to design and implement interventions to supercharge tech, but also to put tech at the heart of renewed productivity growth, well-being and sustainability. We're very much looking forward to talking with you. Thank you.